What's up, guys? Welcome to the Second Take. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jonah.
And we're back after a hiatus, but it was due. School's important, kind of.
I'm busy as hell, but
Jonah's
I'll pass this in.
Jonah's an Ivy League kid, so he's got more than I have to do, but we're both busy, I promise.
Well, when I'm in DC this spring, we can do an edition where we're both in the same room.
We'll do a live
That'll be fun.
a live broadcast from the Wizards Warriors NBA Finals series.
Oh yeah. We're definitely going to at least one Wizards game while I'm there.
And then while the Capitals break the streak of not being able to win a postseason or two postseason series, we'll be at one of those too.
Yeah, well, I don't feel super bad for you.
Maybe we'll get the Islanders the first round. That would require the Islanders to start winning, but other than that.
Well, yeah, the Islanders have gotten back into the playoff race because since
you fire your coach and miracles happen.
Since they fired their coach, we've only lost twice, but we are still on the outside looking in standings wise for now, so we got work to do.
Still a decent amount of time though.
No, yeah, still plenty of time. We got a couple games in hand still, so I'm still confident.
There we go. So, contrary to popular belief, we're definitely not talking about hockey today. I don't know why we just did that, but it worked. So we're going to talk about the Super Bowl a little bit since we haven't really gotten a chance to discuss anything about it. And then after that, we're going to talk about college basketball because we are officially, if you count today, I think we're 13 days away from March. And we're 26 days away from Selection Sunday.
Can't wait.
So it's here.
My last final exam is on 3 p.m. on Selection Sunday, so I'm going to get out of that exam, and they're going to be picking the bracket as soon as I leave and go on spring break, and it's going to be fantastic.
Guess where I'm going to be at that time?
Where?
I'm going to be in the Verizon Center watching the Big Ten championship game. Hopefully having Maryland be involved.
Too.
Yeah. So
we'll both be following it on our phones. I'll just be in a car in Vermont.
It'll be a great time.
Yeah.
Don't miss it. So Super Bowl happened, 10 days ago? How many days ago? 11?
11, right? Was the 5th?
Yeah, 11.
Yeah.
So, the Falcons come out, blowing out the Patriots. Looks like it's over at the end of the first quarter. Looks like it's definitely over at halftime. But a lot of people didn't take into account that Tom Brady still played the game and still was on the other side of the field. Came out at halftime and put on a show for the world. So, I don't know. I guess what's your reaction to the game?
Well, I think there's a narrative that, you shouldn't have been surprised. It's Tom Brady's on the team. Even for Tom Brady, that was an insane game.
Right.
And, obviously, everyone outside of New England pretty much was not happy with the outcome.
Correct.
But if you put that aside, for a minute, which is difficult to put aside my hatred for the Patriots, which is almost surpassing my hatred for the Giants at this point, is how bad it is right now. And that'll subside once the season starts and we have to play the Giants again. But for now, I hate the Patriots just as much. But putting that aside, I think it's pretty clear, to me at least, we were talking about this a few days ago, that I think this win cements Tom Brady's status as the best quarterback ever, which is a debate you can have, but it certainly puts him in guys you have to mention for that. It was his 5th Super Bowl, the most impressive performance by him in a Super Bowl was this one. Even if you count the first half, his stat line still looks really good. And if you look at the second half, it's ridiculous. It was by far the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history. It was the biggest comeback in playoff history, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Super Bowl?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So, all things considered, you feel terrible for the city of Atlanta, which people don't realize, but Atlanta has only won one championship in its entire history, the city.
And it was the Braves.
The Falcons have not won. The Hawks have not won. The Braves won once, and the Thrashers never won while they were there. So,
and when you think about it, the Braves were pretty damn good for a stretch. So you would expect them to have a little bit more than one.
Yeah, they only won. I think it was maybe 1999 was the one time they won. So it's been a while for Atlanta. You definitely feel for the city of Atlanta. That Falcons team was a really fun team. A lot of great guys on it. I think that they'll be making noise for a while. But as much as I hate the Patriots, all credit to them for that game. That's
I'm glad.
Absolutely incredible win.
I'm glad you said that about Atlanta too, because of people I've talked to other than you, pretty much everybody thinks that Atlanta was like a flash in the pan and now they're done. Their team
That's what Todd was telling me.
They're young. The defense is unbelievably young, and they actually played extremely well. Holding Brady to 3 points in the first half of a Super Bowl, come on.
Yeah, I think they're well coached too. I think that's a solid team, and I think you could argue it'll be tough for them just simply because
they're in the
I think
NFC.
Carolina's certainly going to be better.
Right.
Next year, and Tampa Bay is on the rise as well, so it's not going to be easy for them, but I don't think they're going to get any worse next year. It's possible their record will be because they're going to have to face some tougher teams, but I think that team is really talented, and I don't think it was a fluke.
Yeah, they have a great coach. Their defense is going to get better every year. They have Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. Their running backs are outstanding. There's not a whole lot you don't like. The defense was the problem, and the defense ended up getting them to the Super Bowl pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, if you look up and down the NFC right now, there's probably at least 10 teams that you could consider legitimate playoff teams right now.
Right.
Obviously, not all of them are going to make the playoffs, so some teams are going to get hosed. But to me, Atlanta is as strong as anybody in the NFC. Definitely one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the conference.
Right. And so a lot of people are saying that it was more of Atlanta losing the game than Patriots winning, which I think you could absolutely argue that fact because you're winning by whatever they were. What was it, 28-3 at one point, and they end up running the ball a handful of times the entire second half. Obviously, that's not what you want. But also looking at it, Atlanta was built on that style of play. Never take your foot off the gas pedal. Throw the ball whenever you need a big play or a first down or whatever. If it was up to me and I'm looking at Julio Jones on my team and we need a first down, I'm not running the ball no matter what the clock scenario is. I'm giving the ball to Julio Jones and letting him go get that first down, which is what they did. They just ended up getting sacked and holding penalty and wind up not being able to kick a field goal, which would have probably won the game late in the fourth quarter. But I think Matt Ryan had a perfect QBR in that game.
Matt Ryan was excellent. He was the absolute last person to blame for that loss is Matt Ryan. And you could obviously take some issue with the play calling, and I think it's kind of indicative of a wider trend we're seeing with teams being unwilling to run the ball. And a lot of people were questioning Kyle Shanahan for his play calling at the end of that game, who's now the new head coach of the 49ers after that game. But you saw a similar thing in the Cowboys-Packers game. Where a lot of people were upset at Jason Garrett for not running the ball, and I think that what Shanahan did is more defensible than what Garrett did.
Correct.
Just because of the game situations and the Falcons
and who you have on the field.
Right. The Cowboys are a team that runs the ball, and so you gotta do what your strength is. And so I get that it was I still think in retrospect it would have been the right decision to just run the clock down as much as you can, kick a field goal. There's almost no way the Patriots come back. You never count out Brady, but they would have had to come back from 11 points down in 3 minutes.
Yeah, and they would have absolutely needed an onside kick, which we know how that works. That's
right, and the first onside kick hit Gostkowski in the elbow.
Right.
So, and that was another underrated story of that game, because if Gostkowski doesn't miss that extra point, then the Patriots win in regulation.
Right. Probably. And people are furious that they lost their Vegas bets.
Yeah, well, right. That's another thing, is because it's weird because with the final score, the over under in most Vegas places was a push, I think.
Yeah.
And if the Patriots had won in overtime on a field goal, then the spread would have also pushed.
Right.
And Vegas would have just made no money, which is pretty funny. But yeah, it didn't quite happen. I think that when the Patriots won the coin toss in overtime, there was no doubt in anybody's mind that they were scoring a touchdown on that drive, and that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, if I don't know if you heard, but they interviewed Logan Ryan, the corner for the Patriots. I think it was like pretty much right after the game. Like he more or less celebrated a little bit and then walked into the podium and started talking to the press. And they said more or less what was going through your mind when you won the coin toss. And he said, "I started untying my shoes because I knew we were the champs." So
yeah,
that's a spitting image.
There was just no way they were losing.
Yeah, everybody in the world.
Got the ball there.
Exactly. That's what, and that probably brings up a bigger point of how terrible overtime rules in the NFL are, in my opinion. That you can win a Super Bowl on a coin toss, but
insane. Because I think if Atlanta had won that toss, like
same thing. Yeah.
Right, because the problem with Atlanta is not that their defense is bad necessarily. Their defense was gassed.
And they had to play Tom Brady
the entire game.
Yeah,
so,
but they're not playing
so they were facing Tom Brady, A, and B, the Patriots had twice as many offensive plays in the game as the Falcons did.
Right.
Those came in the second half. So the Falcons' defense, like going into that overtime, they were dead on their feet. Like, I don't know how you could expect them to stop that drive.
Yeah, and that's when I was looking at the stats, like I watched the whole game and then afterwards looked at ESPN's app to see like just yardages and all that kind of stuff. And the very first stat I saw, the first line of the team stats, Patriots ran, I want to say 94 or 96.
I think it was 93.
93 plays, and then the Falcons ran 59 or something.
I think it was even less. I think it was like half as much. I think it was like 46.
Either way, the Patriots had far more plays, like more than 35 to 40 plays more than the Falcons had.
Right.
Which that's all you need to see.
That's the story of the game.
Yeah, and the fact that the Falcons even brought it to overtime, having 40 less chances than Tom Brady had, is pretty impressive, if you ask me.
And the thing is, like, especially at the beginning of the game, and this happened less at the end as the Falcons got more tired, but people were assuming the Patriots would win because they didn't think that the Falcons' defense could hold up. They sacked Tom Brady 5 times, and they were getting a ton of pressure on just 4-man rushes. Like,
right.
So the Falcons' defense isn't bad. Patriots' offensive line didn't look as good as people thought it was.
Right.
But
Patriots' defense didn't look as good as people thought it was either.
Right, that's true, especially in the first half. And so, I think that the pick six was a big play early in the game it was Alford, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So there was just a ton of twists and turns in this game. One of the best football games I have ever seen.
Definitely.
Obviously, you want your team in the Super Bowl, but I am pretty happy that I was not a fan.
Just gonna say the same thing.
I would have died watching it.
Exactly.
The Patriots' leading receiver in the game.
Yep.
You know who it was?
James White by a wide margin.
See, that is where the Belichick genius is to me.
Right.
Because no one thought James White was going to have a big role. Like, they assumed it would be Deion Lewis.
My dad actually didn't know who James White was, so that tells you everything that you need to know about the Patriots.
Right, and I doubt that the Falcons had game planned much for him, and they said, you know what, we're going to have James White catch 14 passes in this game. And that's just
and have 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, including the game winner.
Exactly. But going back to the overtime thing, our very own Kevin Herter suggested a college-like version, except you start the ball at midfield. That way you're not in field goal range, and you have to get at least 1 first down in order to be able to kick a field goal.
Right, yeah.
And then you
I don't think that the NFL could really work with what college does with starting at the 25.
Because that's an automatic field goal, and most likely, like 7 times out of 10, you're going to get a touchdown out of that, too.
Right, yeah, and like it's a little gimmicky for the pros. Like It works well for college, but yeah, another reason it works well for college is because the kickers aren't as good, and that's not an automatic field goal from there.
So. Right, but you also, if you give them the ball to the 50 and give each team a chance, you also eliminate ties from the regular season. So that would be another.
We had 2 ties this year, which everyone hated.
Well, that was back-to-back weeks, right, or close to it at least.
Yeah. Arizona and Seattle tied, right?
And then Washington
and Cincinnati.
Yeah. So, I mean, they were definitely close, so it was a weird stretch there.
And those ties, affected playoff races. It was bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. But yeah, it was absolutely one of the better football games I've ever seen. Probably the best football game I've ever seen, if I'm going to be honest. Tom Brady solidified himself definitely as the best quarterback of all time. Jonah and I had a discussion about who's the greatest football player of all time, and I mean, for me, Brady's absolutely in the conversation, but I flat out couldn't tell you who I think is the best ever, and Jonah does now think that Tom Brady is the best ever, and I have no argument.
I just feel I mean, in terms of like most skill, obviously it's impossible to tell, but in terms of like most valuable player of all time, I guess would be Brady. Right. You got to give it to the quarterback.
And the only argument that I could have is just what could he do without Bill Belichick? And obviously we'll never be able to know that answer.
We'll never know what either could have done without the other.
Exactly.
Like, it will always be a mystery.
Exactly. So, I mean, taking everything at face value, yeah, he's probably the greatest player of all time with everything. He's 5 Super Bowl rings now and 7 appearances, thanks in large part to the Giants, who should be America's team for beating Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl. Just saying.
Yeah. Can you imagine if Brady had 7 rings though?
Like, if he was 7-0 in the NBA
Finals,
yeah.
The greatest athlete of all time. Forget about greatest football player.
That would be insane. That would be absolutely insane.
And it'd be justified too. Like they should call him that if he was.
Exactly, but I don't know. Having that much success, at some point you have to falter just a little. Like your drive has to go away, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much longer Brady's gonna play, but it could be another like.
He said the other day
39. That he looks like he's in the shape of his life.
Right, and he said he's having so much fun, and so he said the other day that he's not going to say next year will be his last year. So that means at the very least we'll see him for 1 more year, and probably I would guess a couple more after that.
I bet he plays 3 or 4 more.
Yeah, which would be, and then freaking Romo's going to try to do the same thing.
Well, Romo's not in quite as good physical shape as Brady.
No kidding.
It's fair to say. But yeah, hopefully, I hope for his sake that Romo is somebody's starting quarterback next year, because even if you don't think he's very good, he certainly is deserving of a starting quarterback job. So
he's better than all 3 quarterbacks on Houston's roster combined.
Yeah.
For 4 times more money.
I want to see him in Houston because I think that Texans team could be really good if they had a good quarterback, because that defense is special.
Mike Greenberg said that if Romo was healthy all year long and played for the Texans this year, they would have represented the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Well, they gave the Patriots. I mean,
all right, easy saying they gave the Patriots a game.
Well, no, I'm saying they gave the Patriots a better game than the Steelers did.
Right, but you and I both know that we don't like Ben Roethlisberger.
Right.
I mean, he's obviously better than Brock Osweiler, but.
Right. Yeah, but I think it was just because they got pressure on Brady, and you saw in the Super Bowl that the way to beat Tom Brady is to just. Obviously, this is a way to beat any quarterback, but I think with Brady in particular, because he's not a scrambler, if you get pressure on him in the pocket, then he can get rattled and throw interceptions, have a bad first half like he did.
Right.
And then when the pressure stopped coming, then that's when Brady became like Tom Brady with a capital T and a capital B. Right.
And I think the Giants showed it mostly, but the biggest way to affect him is to get pressure up the middle, because like you said, he's not very athletic, so really what he likes to do is step up in the pocket, and if nothing's there, then he runs for like 5 yards. But if you get pressure up the middle, like you saw with Grady Jarrett in the Super Bowl.
Grady Jarrett, 3 sacks.
Exactly, right up the middle every time. So you just got to dominate the guards and the centers there, and you could beat them. And I'm going to motion to have the Giants move to the AFC. We'll flip-flop with the Jets, because I'd rather have to beat Brady 1 time to make it to the Super Bowl than have to beat 15 teams in the NFC just to get a freaking playoff spot.
I'll be happy to take the Jets in our for what it's worth. Be very happy to have them.
But, yeah, so anything else about the NFL, or are you all set?
I think we're all set. And we'll talk about the NFL some more. Free agency develops when the draft comes up. We'll have some NFL talk, but that's a wrap for the 2016-17 NFL season.
Which was pretty much horrendous by game standards until the very last one, which is all people will remember. So
it was the worst NFL season that I've ever seen, and I'm saying that with my team having the best record I've ever seen. It was still a horrendous football season for the league as a whole, but the Super Bowl rescued it. So So congratulations to Roger Goodell. You really earned your freaking paycheck this year, buddy.
Speaking of which, he earned, in his first 10 years as commissioner, he's earned, I want to say, $40 million more total than Tom Brady has earned his entire career.
How much? He makes like $20 million a year or something, right?
Yeah, he earned $216 million, I want to say, something around that, in 10 years.
He's only been commissioner for 10 years. It feels like longer.
It feels like a lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like the whole time that, like, I remember following sports. I was 9 when he became commissioner, so yeah.
Yeah, Tagliabue was before him. I briefly remember his later years, but all right. So with this being February 16th, we're quite close to March, which means college basketball is at its pinnacle. And if you have literally not seen a single college basketball game this year, I feel so horrendously bad for you because this is the best year I can remember, and so many good teams.
You can tune in on any given night, and there's just an awesome game between two random teams.
Dude, you could watch two unranked teams play on whatever, Fox Sports 1, and you would thoroughly enjoy yourself because literally everyone is having good years, it feels like, or everyone's having bad years, but either way, they're all creating great games. So we're pretty much seeing right now, I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but the historically top-heavy and talented teams, we are seeing them rise to the top at the end of the season.
Yeah, no, that is beginning to happen. I mean, I think overall what we've seen this year is like the best level of parity that we've seen in college basketball in a really long time. And that's not necessarily true in every conference, but I think in the particular examples being the ACC and the Big 12, both are full of teams where any team could beat any other team on any given night, pretty much.
Yeah.
Which is great for college basketball because it means that you don't have to wait for playing Carolina to see a good college basketball game because it's often an even better game when Duke plays Miami,
yes,
and UNC plays Georgia Tech. You know?
Right. Absolutely. So we have the ACC is. I will fight anyone to the death on this. I think it's the best conference of all time right now. This year, I think
think so too.
The only thing.
I mean, who's in last place? Is it Pitt right now, or is it NC State now?
I believe it's Pitt.
Yeah.
No. I think it's Boston. It's Boston College. It's Boston College.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, if you take out Boston College, NC State and Pitt are tied for second to last right now.
Right.
They each have 3 conference wins. Like, either of those teams are capable of beating any team in the conference.
Yeah, and if you looked right now, so Clemson is 4-9 in the ACC and 14-11 overall. Most bracketologies have them in the tournament.
Yeah, the latest bracketology on ESPN is very mean to the ACC, only giving it 9 teams, which I think is pretty. It's not a decision I agree with exactly. It leaves out Clemson, Georgia Tech, and Wake Forest, which seems a little iffy to me. But I think ultimately the ACC is going to end up with at least 10 teams in the tournament, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think they should get 11. And I mean, Wake Forest to me, they're 6-8 right now and 15-11 overall, but they don't really have any notable wins in the ACC. Like, they haven't knocked off Duke. They played Duke. I shouldn't have said that. Damn it, I just jinxed it.
Yeah, you did. They're going to lose now. You're done.
They haven't knocked off UNC. They haven't knocked off Florida State, Louisville, Notre Dame. So they don't really have that notable win, whereas like Georgia Tech has a few, and Virginia Tech has a bunch now. Like Virginia Tech is 7-6 and 18-7 overall, and I believe they were picked to finish second or third to last in the ACC. So I think that the ACC is definitely shaping out the way everyone expected it to towards the end of the season, where you have UNC, you have Duke, you have Louisville at the top, and Florida State's up there too, but they've been slipping just a little. But pretty much everyone knew that UNC, Duke, and Louisville would be the 3 best teams in the ACC. And then you have you also have a disgustingly talented middle of the pack with, I'm going to put Florida State there for now, but Florida State, Notre Dame, Virginia, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Miami, Georgia Tech has like 3 or 4 top 25 wins. And they were picked to finish dead last in the ACC with Pastner as their first-year coach. So there's so much talent in the ACC. I'm pretty sure that any matchup that the ACC finds in the tournament, they will have a legitimate chance to win it, no matter who they're playing. Because they're not going to be like a 16 seed or anything. So, like a 11-6 matchup with Georgia Tech against somebody, I could easily see Georgia Tech winning the game. But then, other than that, you just said the Big 12. I think Big 12 is really underrated this year. With Iowa State is playing out of their mind right now. I like Kansas State a lot. I like Kansas a lot. I like Baylor. I know you don't like Baylor that much, but they're definitely coming back to the pack a little bit. West Virginia is good. Oklahoma State's playing out of their mind. TCU is way better. Texas Tech.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas and Oklahoma are the 2 worst teams in the Big 12, and they're both
so funny.
They're both pretty freaking bad too.
Because those are like, I mean, not necessarily for basketball. You put Kansas up there too, but besides Kansas and basketball, like Texas and Oklahoma are the 2 biggest ticket athletic departments in that conference.
Right.
And they're playing the worst out of anybody right now.
Oklahoma will be able to sleep decently easy today because they did just sign Trae Young, who's one of the best incoming freshmen, so they'll be okay. But, yeah, so Kansas is a lot of people's favorite right now to win the title just because...
I feel like I pick Kansas to win the title every single year in my bracket, so I'm going to try not to do that again, but if I like as of right now had to pick a team to win the national championship, I'd probably pick Kansas.
I think they pretty much have it locked to win their 13th straight Big 12 regular season title.
They're going to win the Big 12 regular season title every year until the end of time.
I mean, it's outrageous. The fact that a major conference and 13 years in a row you finish top that conference throughout the season. That's not saying you get hot and win the tournament. You play 4 good games and end up shocking the world and winning the conference tournament. There's a lot of people that could do that. We saw with UConn and Kemba Walker as what were they, like a 11 seed in that or something? And they
were like the 10th best team in the Big East.
5 games in 5 days and they won it all. But to play an entire conference schedule 13 years in a row and finish with the best record every single year is insane. And it has a lot to do with the fact that they generally don't lose at home, although they did just lose at home, but still.
Yeah, and it's not like they hadn't faced like tough conference opponents during those years. I mean, those like that time span includes Durant's Texas team.
Right.
It includes last year's Oklahoma team that made it to the Final Four. It includes the Blake Griffin Oklahoma teams. There's a lot of good players and teams that Kansas had to beat, and every year they beat all of them back, and it's just such an impressive program.
Exactly. And then we're going to see an undefeated team make it to the tournament. I promise you that. Gonzaga's not losing to anybody.
Gonzaga's not losing. There's no way.
And this is also Gonzaga's best team that Mark Few's had probably ever.
I think this is the best Gonzaga team I've ever seen.
I mean, the Player of the Year race is wide open to me because Josh Hart is like a normal pick for people, but to me, Jalen Brunson's been more important to Villanova. And then Frank Mason, while he's absolutely one of the best players in the country, Josh Jackson's the one that's been taking over that team recently and playing much better and getting them the wins that they need.
I've been telling you how good he was.
Yeah, he's... I have a thing where like I hate a lot of these college players and think they're not good, and then they go to the NBA, Andrew Wiggins, and he turns into a superstar, and Josh Jackson is the next Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not only because he plays for Kansas. They definitely remind me of each other.
Right, they're so athletic and just somewhat streaky shooters, but they're very, very talented. Play good defense. So our top 4 teams right now are Gonzaga, Villanova, Kansas, and Baylor.
Get Baylor out of there.
Those were the 4 teams that were number 1 when the committee released the rankings, right?
Yes.
So if you didn't see, the NCAA did a weird thing this year where they followed in the footsteps of college football, and released the top 16 seeds. It's like, I think it's supposed to be mid-conference schedule or something, but they released the 1 through 4 in each region, how they have it right now. So our number 1 seeds were Gonzaga, Villanova, Kansas, and Baylor. Gonzaga wasn't the number 1 overall, though. I think it was Kansas.
I thought it was Villanova.
It definitely wasn't Gonzaga, whatever.
Wasn't Gonzaga.
And it wasn't Baylor, so it was
right.
one of those other two. But those were the 4 number 1s. And then we had 5 ACC teams in the top 16. So the committee definitely values the ACC, even though ESPN might not.
No Big Ten teams to be found.
And no Big Ten teams, right. And we had, 3 Pac-12 teams? Yeah, because Oregon, Arizona, UCLA.
I mean, I think that we're seeing it because there's like a big 6 conferences, right?
Right.
And so I think that
we're pushing towards 7 almost.
With the AAC?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, Cincinnati and SMU are both legitimate, ranked teams. Those are both probably 5 or 6 seeds in the tournament, which is as well as the Big Ten is doing. So,
better than the Big Ten.
Yeah, right. I mean, the Big Ten will get more teams in, but they won't have a higher seed than the American Conference does.
Yeah.
But this year, it's been focused. The ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12 have been kind of controlling the top ranks outside of a couple of teams, being Villanova and Gonzaga. Most of the top ranks made up of those teams because you don't run into a Big Ten team until Wisconsin and Purdue, who I like Purdue a lot.
I think Wisconsin sucks, and I told you that preseason. That's why I picked Indiana. But
that didn't turn out so well either. But your point was taken about Wisconsin.
If Maryland beats Wisconsin on Sunday, Maryland will be in first place in the Big Ten, and I'll be so mad that I didn't pick my own school to win their freaking conference.
It looks like right now, so we had the same picks in 4 conferences. We both picked Kansas. That looks like it's going to win. We both picked Villanova. That's definitely going to win.
Kentucky.
We both picked Kentucky, which...
that'll happen.
Which, disappointingly, will happen. And we both picked Duke, which still could happen. It looked like it wasn't for a while. That could still be possible. But either way, we had the same pick, so we'll either both get it right or both get it wrong. The ones where we differed were...
Arizona, UCLA.
Yeah. In the Pac-12, Zach had Arizona, and I had UCLA. And in the Big Ten, Zach had Indiana, and I had Wisconsin. So
I still stand by my Indiana pick.
Now, and you're looking good in the Pac-12 right now.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that ends up.
And that Pac-12 pick was... The overwhelming favorite was Oregon, so we went against the grain big time there.
Yeah, we both didn't like Oregon, which I looked pretty good lately.
Yeah, I kind of regret, but I mean, I don't know. I really like the Arizona team. I still really like the Arizona team.
No, yeah, me too. They've grown on me a lot. There's teams that I often don't like, and Arizona's one of them. But they've really impressed me this year. They have a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things on that team. I know it sounds like a cliche thing.
Right? No.
Saying because I don't have any other words, but they can do so many things on that roster, and they have a lot of guys who can play a lot of different roles, and I think that's super valuable in the tournament. So I would not be surprised to see them in the Final Four, even if they don't end up as a top 2 seed.
And the interesting thing about that is that this Final Four is in Glendale, isn't it? Or Phoenix? I think it's in Arizona. No.
Let me look.
No, that's not right. It might be in New Orleans. I don't know where it is.
It's in Phoenix.
Yeah,
right.
So Arizona could be if they're the 1 seed out west, I don't think they'd have to leave the state of Arizona for the entire tournament.
Is the West Regional also in Arizona?
It might be in LA actually. But either way, they're literally
their home too.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, the problem is the only way that happens is if Gonzaga loses a game.
That's true, right. But I could also see if Arizona goes on a run and wins every single one of their next games, don't be surprised if the committee jumps them over Gonzaga.
You think the committee would jump a 3-loss Arizona team over a non-defeated Gonzaga team.
Not to say Gonzaga wouldn't be a 1 seed, but that's to say Gonzaga wouldn't be the higher 1 seed than Arizona.
Yeah, it's possible. I think for that to happen, Arizona would have to win out and win the Pac-12 tournament.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because then you have to, you most likely have to beat Oregon and UCLA again, and maybe USC at some point too.
What's your opinion on UCLA right now? I know you've been down on them the whole year, but
yeah, they don't play a lick of defense, so it's weird. Like I don't know. They're gonna get into a tournament game where they're not gonna be able to score 90 points. It's just gonna happen. Like it has to. You have to go cold at some point.
I'm just looking at I think I'm looking at the bracketology right now, just where they're set up right now is a pretty good look for them, just because this has them in the same region as Baylor. Their second round matchup will probably be against Creighton, which is an awesome matchup for UCLA.
Yeah.
But it all depends on matchups for them, and I think that doesn't reflect very well on them, because ideally the teams that you like in the NCAA tournament are teams that can beat many different kinds of opponents.
Mm-hmm.
And so UCLA, if it runs into the right matchups, will win the national title, because it's the best offensive team that I've seen in a very long time. But the chances of getting all those matchups correctly is pretty low.
Yeah, they remind me a lot of the Duke teams of a couple of years ago who were so good offensively. Remember Rodney Hood and Jabari Parker? Those guys? They were so good offensively, and then they lose in the first round because they don't play defense. So when you get into the NCAA tournament, sure, you could still score 75, but there's going to be a 15 seed that's going to be playing like their life depends on the game. And UCLA is young, and they're going to probably walk into that game and not have a care in the world and just expect to go out and be better. And one time they might get caught doing that.
Well, here's exactly what I was coming to, because on this bracketology, their first round opponent is Princeton, and I think Princeton will beat them. Because
Princeton offense.
Princeton's the exact kind of team that UCLA does not want to play.
Right.
I think Princeton's better than UCLA, but I think they're a terrible matchup for them.
That's absolutely true.
So that just goes to show you. And I saw Princeton play right here, right across the street from where I'm sitting right now at the tiny Dartmouth basketball arena, and we were actually beating them at halftime. Princeton doesn't have any losses in the conference, but they came back, had a really good performance in that game. I liked what I saw from them. They're the only potential tournament team that I have seen in person this year, so I feel like I can talk about them a little bit. But they did look pretty good, and I think that they could surprise someone in the first round, especially if it's a team like UCLA that's really offensively focused.
So UCLA is a 3 in that, you said? So Princeton would be a 14?
UCLA is a 4, Princeton's a 13.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I expect UCLA to move up a little bit in that.
I would expect, I think one of those Pac-12 teams ends up with a 1 seed.
Is that the bracketology with Kentucky ahead of UCLA and Duke?
Kentucky and Duke are both 3s, but then UCLA is a 4.
Kentucky is a freaking joke. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I don't like this Kentucky team either, and I'm not going to pick them to go very far.
Just because they scored 105 or 103 and beat Carolina doesn't mean that they're the greatest team in the world.
Yeah, I think that people are putting a lot of stock in that one game. But if you look at the rest of their resume, it's not that strong. No
kidding, and they have terrible losses.
I mean, their top 50 wins, I'm looking at the bracketology thing right now, they beat Michigan State at the very beginning of the season. They have the UNC win, and then they have 4 okay SEC wins. That's and none of those 4 teams are ranked higher than 26 in RPI. So these aren't super high quality teams.
And they were blown out of the water by the second best SEC team, which is Florida, and then the third best SEC team, which is South Carolina, took them down to the wire and should have beat them without their second best player in PJ Dozier. So when they play good competition, they don't necessarily show up all the time.
Right, and so their worst loss is at Tennessee, which isn't a good loss, but it's not a terrible loss. But the problem is that when they face these top teams, they're losing to them. Like, they beat North Carolina, but that wasn't a great stretch for UNC that they got them in right there. I think if they played each other again today, UNC would win that game and would not be giving up 103 points.
And UNC should have won that game when it was played, too. So
that's true, right.
It wasn't like they were dominated or anything. UNC had it almost locked up, and they just lost it at the end. But
right, so if you look at their resume aside from that game, their best game is what? The South Carolina win? Is it like the fact that they almost beat Louisville? I mean, I don't know.
That's what exactly. And then so people would make the argument like, oh, it's conference play. They're a bunch of freshmen. Like, I don't know, conference
it's a
play.
terrible conference.
That's exactly what I'm about to say.
Play.
Like if you say that's the reason that they lost games, then an 0-20 ACC school should be the number one seed in the tournament because the ACC, that's the reason they lost games too.
Right, exactly. Not all conferences are the same.
The SEC should have three schools in, right? 3? Do I want 3 of them in?
The SEC is going to... currently, Joe Lunardi has
if you say
4
more
SEC
5.
teams because Arkansas got a pretty good win, so they're like on the bubble now.
They just beat South Carolina last night too, so that'll probably sneak them in.
Yeah, and I think that the committee would want to get more than 3 SEC teams in, so I'm guessing they'll find a way to get somebody else in.
Yeah, well, if they know what's good for them, they would just put ACC schools in instead of SEC and let people actually enjoy basketball games rather than watch a terrible SEC school try to play, I don't even know, a 7 seed that's from like, I could see like Arkansas being an 11 or a 10 and having to play like, I don't know, say Syracuse at a 7, and I think Syracuse would blow them out of the water.
Oh, so we're high on Syracuse now?
No, we're high in the ACC. That was the first thing that came to mind that would be that low in the rankings because they
still. Just saying.
they still have work to do, by the way.
I think they should move Georgia Tech and Florida State into the SEC and just like.
Why? Because you want
a couple of crappy teams.
You want to try to
balance it out.
You want to take away 2 of your losses this year?
No, I want Kentucky to lose more games. That's what I want.
How about we just do a government investigation into John Calipari so he can get suspended again? Because I know he cheats somehow. I just don't know how yet.
That's a very good idea. But you know, he's used to giving money to people, so I'm sure he'd bribe the government as well.
Exactly. Or someone's taking exams for those kids. I know it. There's some way that they're rigging the system.
And that would never happen at the University of North Carolina.
Never. Chapel Hill is built on the most incredible standards.
Absolutely. Nothing but the best.
They swear on the Bible before they give their testimonies and take their exams and everything, so there's no way they're lying.
Okay, so just one last question before we wrap this up.
Yes.
Who's your favorite mid-major team, not including Gonzaga?
Who's my favorite mid-major team? Not by favorite, do you mean favorite team I enjoy to watch or favorite team to win the title? Well, I have a chance to make to the Final Four.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, favorite team that has a chance to make it to the Final Four outside of Gonzaga that's mid-major.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
This team is talked about nonstop every single year, and then suddenly this year they fell off the map. Wichita State.
I knew you were going to say that. I was hoping you'd say that.
They are literally, nobody has to say a word. They're not doing anything special. They're just going about their business, and they're winning games. And they're being extremely overlooked, but they're just as dangerous as they always have been.
Yeah, no, this is a great Wichita State team. A lot of people were talking up Illinois State, who's also a good team,
and has a chance.
Tournament also.
Yeah, they have a legit chance to be at large.
Yeah, so I think they could get in. This bracket has them in as an at-large team. So there's a couple of good teams in that conference this year, but Illinois State was getting talked up a lot, and then Wichita State played them, and they beat the hell out of them.
Yeah, smoked them.
And they showed who's really boss the Valley Conference.
Right.
A lot of people are talking up St. Mary's. I don't know why they're still ranked.
No, they got one kid. That Landale, Jock Landale he's really good, but no.
Right, he's good, but everyone, like when they get killed killed by Gonzaga. Everyone's like, oh, well, it's Gonzaga. We don't have to knock them out of the rankings for losing to Gonzaga. But, like, the fact is that, like, they're way worse than Gonzaga. Like,
yeah, but then the other point of that is, like, Gonzaga loses. Nobody gives Gonzaga credit ever. Like, Gonzaga will be the number 1 seed in the tournament, but people will be like, oh, they're going to lose second round because they're no good. But then they beat St. Mary's, and everybody's like, oh, well, Gonzaga's so good. Why does St. Mary's have to get knocked out?
Yeah, right, exactly. My, in terms of mid-major teams, my favorite is also Wichita State, but a couple other ones I'd point out are, I like the way VCU looks right now.
Yep.
They've been winning a lot of games. This looks like, a couple of previous VCU teams that we've seen that have gone pretty far in the tournament and are always super exciting when they do it. So, shout out to VCU. And then also to Dayton,
yep.
Which is always a solid squad. Archie Miller is one of the best mid-major coaches out there. There's a lot of rumors swirling around about the now open NC State job and Archie Miller.
Oh, God, I'll hate that so much.
Because he graduated from NC State, so there's a lot of rumors around there. But, yeah, Dayton and VCU out of the A-10, probably the best mid-major conference, top to bottom, I'd say.
Absolutely.
I think that I don't know. I think that conference, top to bottom, is pretty much on par with the SEC.
Yeah.
But
I think it might be better.
Yeah, it easily could be. VCU, Dayton, Rhode Island, Davidson, Georgia Washington. Those are all solid teams.
I'll give you one more that I really like and I think is going to win a tournament game, and they won a tournament game last year against Michigan State, and that's Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, that's another really solid low major team. We mentioned Princeton. Vermont is still undefeated in conference.
Vermont is good, yeah. Solid. They're very good. And Monmouth is back again for blood.
Yeah, UNC Wilmington too.
Very good, yep. Quick, can score a lot of points. Yeah, that's a matchup actually. If UCLA gets that one, that on paper it's going to look like UCLA will be able to beat them, but I legitimately think UNC Wilmington could win that game.
They can run with anybody.
Exactly, they play the same style, but that's what's going to make people think like, oh, no way they beat UCLA. But I don't know.
This bracket I'm currently looking at, it has UNC Wilmington matched up against Wisconsin. I think UNC Wilmington would win that game by 20 points.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. All I can say is just start watching college basketball every single night, because it's you might lose sleep because of it, but it's gonna you're gonna be happier.
Absolutely. What do we got on tonight? Is there any
we got, speaking of the devil, we got Wisconsin against Michigan, but other than that, not a whole lot going on.
That's good, because I gotta watch the Rangers and the Islanders tonight.
Oh boy.
As we end the podcast the way we started with hockey.
Hockey, of course.
Yeah.
We talk nothing about hockey, but hockey.
Yeah.
Alright, so yeah. So we have, this is like the calm week of not a whole lot of crazy college basketball games going on, and then the following week is when everything will pick up again, and there'll be huge matchups. Like UNC has the most ridiculous last 5 games of any team I think I've ever seen in my life in college basketball.
Really,
so
saving the
dude, it's unreal. If you get 2 of them, you might still even get a 1 seed.
Yeah, well, we're currently ranked 10th right now. Yeah, so the home stretch is home against Virginia, home against Louisville, at Pitt, at Virginia, and home against Duke.
Yeah.
So can't wait. It's going to be a good stretch. Hopefully we can use that Pitt game as a little, but like that's not.
They're not bad,
and it's on the road.
And you only beat them by 2 when you played them at home. Like they're not bad.
Yeah, UNC could win all of these games. They could also lose all of these games.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the ACC, folks. Wrapped up in a blanket. Speaking of that last team you just mentioned, the 4-letter word starts with D, and it's not a bad word. It's Duke. They're currently 6-0 under the greatest of all time being back on the sideline, and people about 3 weeks ago were saying what could happen if Duke didn't make the tournament, and now they're knocking on the door of a 2 seed. So, my bracket might be right still.
It's coming together. Yeah, and we might still be right about Duke winning the ACC. They're only a game behind UNC.
And they got to play UNC again, so.
And their home stretch is, it's not
good.
Because there's no such thing, but it's easier than UNC's.
Yeah, they still got Florida State, but they got Florida State at home. They got
They're at the
Wake
Carrier
Forest.
Dome.
Yeah, that's a
That'll be a
weird
tough
one.
one.
That's a weird one. We'll talk about that later on. But yeah, so from here on out, it's going to be a lot of college basketball just because it's so awesome right now. We'll throw in some hockey. Baseball just started with pitchers and catchers reporting. Am I forgetting any sports? But NBA. We'll talk about that also. But
Yeah, once it gets closer to playoffs, I usually, like, as much as I love basketball, I have a hard time tuning into too much NBA until the NCAA tournament ends, and then I get really into it.
see, I feel the same way because the brand of the NCAA is so much more fun for me to watch.
Yeah, and there's so many more teams. It's like, I don't know, it's just fun.
I agree. So yeah, there's a lot going on in basketball. Like Serge Ibaka just went to the Raptors, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. And college basketball will be the main focus from here. Probably.
I did say how terrible I thought this Magic team was going to be at the beginning of the season, and I was right about that. This Magic team is a disgrace, and their management is even worse.
Yeah, very bad. Very, very, very bad.
You know who used to own the Orlando Magic is Betsy DeVos's either husband or father.
You sure she still doesn't own it? Because that's the way it's going right about now.
Well, that's why their management is so terrible. That's why they traded their best player for Ibaka and then traded Ibaka for a much worse player.
Are they misspelling words in the programs and using improper grammar, or is it working well?
I don't know. I haven't been to any games to Orlando lately. But
Neither has anybody else, so I don't know who to ask.
That's true. That's true.
All right, that'll do it for this week. We'll be back next week, and watch your TV at some point this week to watch sports, please.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks for listening.